getting some other good dogs, and the rest is history basically. But you know, I got to see good dogs go in my time. I was a young guy. I mean, I remember just a couple of weeks ago when I was at the dog show. You know, I mean, I look at these guys and they're like, "Wow, Rascal, man, we remember you when you were 15, 16 years old. I was the youngest out of that group. You know,
Right.
I
Right.
mean, Nino, which is Pizza Man. I think he's got me by I don't know, maybe maybe about 5 or 8 years. So the only one that I remember that was my age at the time, either 1 year older than me or 2 years older than me, was Game Dog Rico.
Right. Right. Right.
So me and him always, wherever there was anything happening, me and him always talked a lot because he was my age, more or less. And then Red Line Lenny and them, they were always smart guys. Man, I was among the best, to be honest with you.
Well,
I mean, if you look at these, excuse me.
but speaking on the best, right? What you think of, like, they got this saying, like, with guys who don't go outside of the city to do dogs or whatever. What was the competition like in that area? And would you consider, just because if you go into, you know, your circle of dogmen, that competition, if I just stayed in that area with my dogs against that competition, am I bulldogging or what?
You're damn right. You got to remember the Northeast, and I'm counting New Jersey. So, because if you're in Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens,
Five
you're about
boroughs?
25. You're right there, and then you got Long Island, and then you have Jersey. We had the best dogs. We didn't have to go nowhere,
Right, right,
you
right,
know. And if you couldn't find one, it's because you didn't want one, you know.
right.
Um, Everybody was professional at that time about it. But I mean, if you wanted to go a little bit further, then you go up to Rhode Island, and you got the infamous Captain America. You had the Yankee boys
Right,
in
right.
Brooklyn and Queens. The Yankee boys. Then you had the rooftop boys. They kept
And
dogs on top of the roof.
let me tell you, hold
Western
on,
Beach.
hold on, hold on. But being that you hit that, yo, I got a story I found out, and I didn't find out who they was, but they owned the meat market, right, in
Yes,
Brooklyn.
they had what
What was
we
the
what we know, Western Beef.
Western Beef? Yo, my grandmother used to go there back in the days. We used to go there to get food, buy meats, and it's crazy because I always heard dogs, and it sounded
Barking.
like they was in the air, but I couldn't understand where the barking was coming from. And then I'm talking about maybe about 10 years ago, I was talking to Mr. Bill, and I just brought the subject up to him, and he said, "Oh, those was the rooftop boys." I was like, "They really had dogs on the rooftop, huh?"
Yes, they did. Yes, I remember going there several times, and we used to go around the back of the business, and we used to get lifted to the top of the roof on a forklift.
Wow.
And like I said again, so I mean, again, you had Yankee boys, you had the rooftop boys, you had everybody there,
You
you
had
know, and
competition, basically.
there
It's
was
a lot of
competition,
competition.
a lot of competition. So and they always used to say back then, oh, the better dogs were in the South. That's bullshit. They were, dog is where it's at.
Yeah,
Doesn't
it's
matter.
where's it at? That's
But
true.
we,
But you're
but
gonna be
we had
biased a little bit to where you from, though. I understand
sure,
that part too.
sure,
But
sure, sure. But we had the dogs. I mean, you had my brothers, the Jersey boys,
right,
right over
right,
the bridge. You had the Havana boys, you
right,
know,
right.
you had Jesse Rodriguez, you had all those guys over the bridge.
Now, owning dogs, being that you was in Maryland, what's the how much difficult is it owning dogs in the city and in like because you had more space in Maryland, I was assume when you did it down
Well,
there,
well,
right?
well. You know what? There was no problem with keeping dogs, no matter what borough or suburb you lived in, until they got kind of exposed.
Right,
When people
right,
started finding out what was going on, and then then the game changed a lot. It was back then. It was a little bit more better. Well, no, it was a lot more better.
right,
You know,
right,
it was about seeing who got the better dog and being sportsman about it. But there's always that banana in the fruit bowl.
right,
You
right.
might meet a person and you just don't like the way he comes off, then you don't deal with him anymore because the last thing you want is to be in a square with somebody that you dislike and something happens, and now it becomes more than what it should be.
Got you. And
If you know,
and being creative. Now we was talking about like some unknown dog man like J Boy and Brutus and Chachi. Now far as back in now we going a little back, like you said, back in the early 80s in the hood, basically. Yo, I remember seeing Brutus for the first time, and man, that dog was stretched out and so like sharp looking. Like he looked like a bodybuilder in motion, and I never seen a dog looking like that, man. This guy used to walk his dog everywhere, and he was ready to go within 10 minutes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, like we talked earlier. These guys used to walk. Especially in the summertime, you're outside all day and you're walking around and you got your dog.
You got your
So you
dog
walk
with you.
maybe 10 or 12 miles, maybe 13 miles a day with the dog. And so the dog at the same time, while you're walking, you put him in a kind of in a key,
Yeah, yeah. And
you
that
know,
and that space where you said your cousin Chachi used to walk from, what's that?
all
Ocean
the
Hill?
off Ocean Avenue H all the way down to if anybody knows, down to Fort Greene, Brooklyn. From Fort Greene,
Man,
Brooklyn,
that's
just come down to Best Side.
and if you don't know, that's a hell of a walk. I don't think I know a lot of people was criticizing James Crenshaw for his hand walking. I think he said he would walk 15 miles or whatever. That walk
Yeah,
that Chachi was doing, James Crenshaw
yeah,
walk ain't got nothing on
yeah.
that.
And not only that, you got to remember. See, then once you get into the bulldog, you realize that there's something called air, stamina. You know,
Right.
when you don't know nothing, you're just throwing them down and seeing maybe 15, 20 minutes. You don't know about the long haul. So as you get older, you realize you start learning what these dogs are. First of all, my hat's off is to the American Pit Bull Terrier, the best dog ever. There's no breed of dogs that can compete with them.
Pound for pound.
Period. 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 I don't care what, if it's half pit bull, half lion, half pit bull. I don't care what it is. The American Pit Bull Terrier, there's no other dog like him. Period. A game bred American Pit Bull. Okay? So,
Right.
but again, at that time, like I said, I got to see a lot of dogs. I got to see, you know, Champion Rocky, Grand Champion Wine, or I mean, so many damn dogs.
Now, Champion Rocky, being that you brought him up, that was the son of Jeep, right?
Right off of Jeep to Miss Rage.
Miss Rage. Oh, okay, Grand Champion Miss Rage.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember Mr. Bill telling me a story about him because I think it was in his match against Grand Champion Ace or one of them Grand Champions where he
I
lost.
was I was there.
He shitted out like a 2 inches of collar after that
Yeah,
loss.
yeah, but some other things happened within that match, which I don't really want to bring up because I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Right,
But
right, right.
it was against Ace,
Oh,
and
okay.
Ace did something that I guess a lot of people didn't pick up, or they did pick up, but never said anything about it.
Right,
But
right.
but at the time, Rocky was owned by Mike Pedicus, and Rocky actually became Mike Pedicus' house dog. So his excuse, for what I understand, was, oh, he's losing. I want to pick him up. He's my daughter's dog. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But something happened within that show that Rocky could have won, but
Okay.
he picked him up maybe 2 minutes too early.
So and it
You
said
know,
he was a hard biting dog, huh? Right,
he
right.
was a good dog. He could bite. He could bite. He was a good dog all around. He was a brown and white dog. He was a good dog.
Right,
He was
right.
a good dog. He was, and then I think he lost 2 or 3 times. I'm not too sure,
It was
but
two. He was a three. He was a
okay.
champion with a two
Yeah.
two losses under his belt. I forgot.
But no,
Matter of fact, he lost the grand champion Buck too. Also,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, he
Right,
lost the
right.
Buck.
He lost the buck. So you got to remember, his 2 losses were really game losses. They weren't like they picked him up before he quit. He
Right.
just fell behind, and there was no way. Why leave a bulldog down when you have no choice? That's why these days sometimes these guys bet 100,000, 200,000, and it's about the money. It's not
About
about the
the money.
bulldog.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
when it becomes that, then I mean. I don't know. Everybody has different views. I feel that it's always got to be about the bulldogs.
Right,
You know,
right, right,
if you can't afford to lose $1,000 or you can't afford to lose $100,000, they don't do it for that much because the dogs don't know what they're going for. I mean, perfect example. I was invited up to Akron, Ohio, and you had the SWAT team, had a bunch of guys there from Akron, Ohio. I was invited there, and I was there to ref a show.
right,
I was there to ref two shows, and I guess the guys liked the way I was doing it, so I ended up refing 10 shows. You know,
right.
and there was big money. There was big money, 10, 15 grand, 8 grand, and I refed all these shows. And the best show that night was a pair of bulldogs that went for $1,000.
Mm,
You know,
right,
but
right.
again, to each his own. You know, to each his own. Um, these dogs here, you know, again, there's no other dogs in the world that can compete.
Right.
You know, it's just they're bulldogs. But yeah, you know, I came from the old school. You know, and these days I open up. You know, a lot of people end up talking a lot. They go online, they start talking to people they don't know who they're talking to,
Right.
or one thing I noticed is that everybody has a grand champion. You know, I mean, there's so many grand champions that you can't even keep
It can't even
count
keep
them.
track of them, huh?
So and then sometimes you meet these people who supposedly are dogmen or whatever you want to be called, and they invite you and you go there and you see the way they do their rules. You know, and their rules are nothing like the way they should be. You
Right,
know, so but like I said, to each his own. You know,
right,
I think
right.
not all the grand champions, but a lot of grand champions today aren't really what I consider to be a sporting dog journal grand champion. You know,
Now,
if you wanna,
speaking of Sporting Dog Journal, how important was that back then compared to
well, you
not
know
having it
what?
now?
At one time, it was more of it was good, you know, but there was people like didn't send shows in, and it's okay because as long as you had somebody, let's say a Mr. Bill or Redline Lenny or Freddie the Arab or Pizza Man or whoever, they see him go, they know what he is.
Right,
You
right,
understand what I'm saying?
right,
A lot of these people who send their matches in, it was cool. You know, that's what the magazine's there for because they wanted to get that little certificate. You know, which is all good. But just because you didn't send your matches in doesn't mean that you didn't have a good dog.
Well, I knew a few old timers that didn't send the matches in from back in the
Hey,
days too.
I respect that. I
Yeah,
respect that. I mean,
and
and then it got out. Then it got out. I got out of hand where Kelly said, "Well, listen, I'm only going to start recognizing these shows with certain people reffing
right,
because
right,
I'm getting what we used to call paper champions." You know.
right, right. And
You know?
to add on top of that, why I think the journal was good because you got to see, like, let's say if you're interested in a certain line of dogs, but you get to see, like, if you can't get to the actual site itself, you got to read about litter mates and, certain lines and
Yes.
what's doing what. And that's what made it a lot easier for you to make
Yes.
your
Yes.
selection if you couldn't get to, a certain, you couldn't get all over the country. But you'll
No.
see
No.
litter mates from certain dogs that's doing what they doing, and that'll help you, that assisted you in your buying process, basically.
Right. Right. And choosing what particular line.
Right, right. Choosing
I
lines
mean,
versus
because
not
yeah,
because
because
today they like, oh, they just show you the pedigree. You know what I'm saying? And then you thinking you're supposed to get something good at that. Your odds
right.
your
Right.
odds ain't as high when you actually knowing what dogs is doing what. You know what I'm saying? Like this dog, and that'll help you with what dogs is good stud dogs. Which dogs is really producing because in the matches, these dogs is winning or they going out game. Either one.
Right, right. You get to choose what line you would like to work with, you
Right,
know. But like today, and like it used to be back then, most of the times, you know, sometimes what you get is not really what you paid for,
right.
because
Right.
dishonest people,
Oh,
you know.
and they're going to always, to me, they're going to always exist So,
Oh yeah, of course. In
and you know
anything you
something?
do.
But let me say this now, being that you brought that up in reference to dishonest people, right? Now,
What
knowing what we,
happened?
huh?
What you said? I'm
No,
sorry.
I said you said dishonest people, right? Now, let me say something about this. Now, being that we know what we know on Carver Dogs today and how dishonest they said he would that he was, would it have been a wise choice to make a purchase from him back then?
Well, a lot of people did, and a lot of people were happy. So
Right, right,
he was producing well-bred dogs, and did he finagle with dog papers? I'm sure he did. You know,
right,
I
right,
mean, let's keep it 100. Let's say what it is. Did he play with the paperwork? He probably did, but
right,
it was his recipe, and maybe he will give you the recipe, but he's not giving you the ingredients.
right. He don't want you to be his competition, basically. So,
Yeah, but at that time he was already starting to sell. He was there at that particular time. He was just became a breeder after becoming an active dog fighter. You know,
right, right, right,
and I mean, you have all, and he wasn't the only one. Like I said, there was, my mentor, who I looked up to, was Ozzie Stevens. You know,
oh, okay,
um, and he was in Pittsburgh. You know, I met him. We became really good friends. We used to talk a lot. He had some of my dogs, believe it or not, and I had one or two of his dogs. But I wouldn't tell nobody how my dogs were bred, because sometimes it became a point where, at the end of the day, I was talking. We were talking. You also had the dog thief,
right, right,
and I mean, usually when somebody steals your dog, it's somebody that who's been on your yard.
right,
And I hate to say this, but I mean, you know, I've had dogs stolen from me from people that have actually sat on my table, broke bread with me and my family, and not everybody gets to go into my house. You understand what I'm saying?
right.
And when you have somebody that does that to you, it puts like kind of like, hmm, um, wow, it's like a punch in the stomach, you know.
Well,
So
it's just one simple word for them type of people to me. They just backstabbers because you could be doing anything other things other than the dogs, and you're gonna have backstabbers that's gonna be cool with you, and at any given moment they just there to just stab you in your back.
yeah, 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 and this, but again, there's in the dog game that I was used to, there was all sorts of people.
Right,
You had police officers,
right, right,
you
right.
had you had priests, you had I mean, everybody, teachers, you know, everybody was involved, and people were respectful. For most part, people were respectful.
Now the
And
grand champion Virgil dog that you spoke of earlier too, didn't Ozzie Stevens own him at one time or had some association with him?
he made Virgil a grand champion. That was his
Oh, oh,
dogs.
oh,
He
okay.
he campaigned them and then sold them.
Oh,
I
so
mean, back then, Bemis STP Kennels used to buy a lot of dogs that were already 2 or 3 time winners. And not saying they're not really dog men, because they were great dog men, but they bought 2 or 3 time winners, and they won one with them, and either made them a champion, and now they got a champion. They
right.
didn't raise Bemis and them. I think became more of decent breeders once they figure out how to breed buck, you know?
Oh, okay.
But I remember back then, I mean, I remember they were just breeding the guys that I grew up around, they were just breeding good dogs to good dogs. They weren't even looking at pedigrees.
Right, right. Best the best.
They were looking at this dog can bite hard and scratches hard. This dog ain't got no mouth but rides the hairs, talented. Let me breed this dog to this dog. Maybe I'm gonna get both, best of both worlds.
So
Sometimes it was
being that you said
right.
not cutting you, being that you said this dog could bite hard, give me one male and one female that you remember from back in the days, two of the hardest biters.
Wow. Ooh, trying to remember. Um,
I know you old school. It's gonna take a minute. Go ahead. I got
but
time.
you know what? A lot of these dogs, I got to see a lot of good mouth dogs. Okay,
Right.
but one of the gamest dogs I seen, I will say it
See,
like that,
that was gonna be my
was
next. That was gonna be my next question.
And one of the gamest dogs I seen and became a grand champion, and he wasn't being picked, was Steve's Black's grand champion Wino.
Now speaking on Wino, because you seen how many of his shows you seen?
I seen all of them.
Wow, I wanted to do something on Wino too. But he beat champion Chaka, right? White Winchester.
Yes, that's what I was going to get to. So his beginning, if I remember right, I think Wino's first match was into Bob Pitts,
From
and
Jersey,
that's when Pitts was Pitts.
grand
He was
champion country, and
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. So that's when he won. I see him go, and then somebody ended up calling Steve because Wino was exactly a wino. He was the kind of bulldog that got bit and was crying. So back then, you hear a dog crying like that, squealing, he's about to quit. He's going to pack it in. He doesn't like it, and he should take the bottom. So I'm sure Bob Pitts called the next guy and said, hey, man, this is a guy down here, blah, 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 just got beat. But he could be stopped. He could be stopped. I saw this and I saw that or whatever. And I remember the second fight was against some guys back in the days called Pocono Rick. And I remember Pocono Rick had a dog called Meatball. And he was a two-time winner, hall biting dog.
Was they from the Poconos though? I think so, right?
Yeah,
Was it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was from the
Right.
Poconos.
Okay.
So that was his second. Same deal. Wino whining. I mean, Meatball was putting it on.